of humanoid beings, different animal species, very ornate carved statues, and some built structures that we found in that photograph and other photographs taken by both NASA and the European Space Agency. So we're really entering a new era here of Mars anomaly research, where the great foundation made by people like Richard Hoagland, Mike Barra, Graham Hancock, Robert Bauval, Carl Munk, and others, is now being supplemented with data from the rovers, in which we're seeing that, in fact, Mars was not just inhabited in ancient times, as the satellite imagery has always suggested, but the rovers show, in fact, is an inhabited planet today. And that's fraught with implications and complications that we simply haven't even discussed as a global society here on Earth, much less resolved.
Okay, next up we go to Gerald in Dayton, Ohio. Hey, Gerald, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, good talking to you guys. Hey, I had a dream the other night that there was a economic collapse, total collapse inside the U.S., and there was two different factions fighting. There was two different military groups, like generals, fighting it out inside the U.S. Is there any indication of this type of activity that you've seen?
No, there was no data that was derived from Project Pegasus that I either learned directly or heard about that indicated any future civil war scenario in the United States.
All righty, thank you.
All right, appreciate you being part of that program. Next up, we go to Temecula, California, first-time caller. Hello there, go ahead.
Hi, George, this is my night. I got disconnected twice, and I was able to call in a third time.
Not this time. Go ahead, you're all set.
Okay, so, George, I'd like to thank you for being a link in the chain, first off, and I was on the chat last night. And I have a question for you, Andrew, and thank you for being on the air tonight.
Thank you.
Are the teleportation hubs that you're talking about, are they located in a specific pattern around the Earth, like perhaps Buckminster Fuller's shape of the dodecahedron or something of that nature?
That question comes up quite a bit because of the information that we have about ley lines, that there's a natural geomagnetic grid around the surface of the planet. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that the teleports were located on either ley lines or intersections of ley lines, primarily because when Jack Pruitt trained us on the teleport at Curtiss-Wright, he explained that what Tesla had discovered was a way using hardware, basically using a device, to draw a form of energy that permeates the universe, that he was calling radiant energy, that it had among its properties the capacity to bend the fabric of time-space. So I don't believe that the connection with ley lines was required because the device was able to propagate one of these portal tunnels wherever it was placed.
These portal tunnels, could they be rainbow tubes of light at any time?
Well, they were tubes of light. That's a pretty accurate description, but they were moving tubes of light. So as you were moving through the portal tunnel, the walls of the portal tunnel seemed to be moving behind you, and if you looked to the side, you saw that all sorts of transparent images of different random events were occurring.
Oh, interesting. I had an experience in Machu Picchu where I was all of a sudden popped into space and I saw these planetary spheres. And first I was attracted to it by a screeching sound, and I turned to my right, and all of a sudden, boom, I was in the solar system watching this sphere go by me. But the sound connected me from this world to the black deep space. And then I had another experience that same day. Later on, I was going through a rainbow tube of light, and I go, wow, I wonder if I could slow this down. But before I even thought that, each color was in my peripheral vision, slowing down one at a time. So it's interesting that, I went back into Cusco at the time, and it said, this is the rainbow tube of light. Rainbow city of light, they called it on a poster.
Right. Well, there wasn't a rainbow pattern inside the tunnel. It was more of a blue-white luminous quality. I think it was distinguished by the fact that when you looked at the walls of the tunnel, you could see all of these holographic images of random events from different timelines rushing past you. The universe was actually being opened and moved past us. That's how it was explained to me. But I'm not a physicist, so I can't actually explain how it was being accomplished. But I will state the truth to the end of my days, which is that we were doing it.
Andy, whatever happened to the other youngsters who were part of the Pegasus program? Where are they now?
Well, I spoke to 6 or 7 of them who were in my immediate group. The 140 American school kids who were brought into Project Pegasus were arrayed in 14 groups of 10 co-experiencers. and each of them had a team captain who received specialized training if a mishap occurred on the project. I had been selected as the captain of Blue Team. So, for example, when we jumped through the device in 1971 and found that we had accidentally arrived in 1991 in Santa Fe, and I had to summon help from Sandia, I kind of pulled rank and asserted my authority as captain of Blue Team, and we got home through by somebody coming up from Sandia, and we jumped basically 20 years home. I was able to question those 6 or 7 participants from my team at length, and what I found was very interesting. Everything that involved quantum access that had occurred inside the 4 corners of the learning lab that we were placed in, being placed in the Montauk chair, participating in remote viewing for the U.S. Navy, being spun to induce out-of-body experiences, and the kind of far-out things that were going just within the learning lab, all of the participants remembered that. But then when I began questioning them about things that had happened at the defense labs in New Jersey, like the probe to 2013 that we took part in up at ITT Defense, their memories were far more partial and fragmentary. And it was clear to me that they had been basically brainwashed to forget what happened. And in the book, I'm going to describe what some of these things that were done to us were done to basically prevent us or try to create a situation in which we wouldn't want to revisit our memories. There were some very brutal things that were done to us. And, I think the part of the human story of my account is the fact that I overcame that mistreatment, and I resolved spiritually that I would not forget what happened, so that when I grew up, I could help liberate teleportation so that it could advantage everybody on our planet. But that's really another dimension of the story, is that one solitary individual overcame that brainwashing, overcame just the trauma of being in the project per se, and I'm now able as an adult to integrate what happened and share it with others so that maybe we can do something with this teleportation technology. But I was able to reach 6 or 7 of them, and their memories were essentially corroborative of mine, except, for example, when I'd have a discussion about what happened at a different defense contractor location off campus, let's say they would talk about it one Saturday morning, and then the next Saturday they would not only forget what they had said, but forget that we had talked the previous Saturday. So I'm sorry to say that my co-participants, I think, are still victims of the brainwashing that was inflicted on us.
Do you believe the government has stopped the program, or might it be continuing in some form or fashion?
Well, we know that it was operational in 81 because that was the time that and it had actually been modeled into jump rooms where you were literally encased in something when you were located somewhere else in the universe, because that was the basis by which I did the 2 trips up to Mars. We also know it was still operational in 1991, fully 20 years after I was a child participant, because of the mishap that occurred in 71 when we were confused when we got to the state capitol grounds there in Santa Fe because the landscape had changed. And we asked some kids coming out of the roundhouse what year it was, and they told us it was 1991. So we know that it was still operational in 91 because we got home to 1971 from a teleport at Sandia. We also know that it was still operational in different parts of the country in 2000 because that's when they had me jump. Excuse me. I have that wrong. The jump between Van Nuys and Los Alamos was in 1980. So the farthest I can take the timeline is to 91 when we got back from Sandia back
1991. Okay, we'll be back with final phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. Well, Sci-Fi's 2012 show did very well in the ratings. That's the program that highlighted Richard C. Hoagland. And as a matter of fact, on our next Coast to Coast program, Whitley Strieber, Bob Gleason join us as we talk about 2012 and the implications for all of us from their perspective. When we come back, we'll take final phone calls with Andy on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie with our special guest tonight, Andy Basiago. Am I pronouncing your name right all night, by the way? Basiago, isn't it?
That's correct. It's Basiago, like Chicago.
I almost, when I was reading it the first time a couple weeks ago, I almost said Basiago. It looks that way.
Yes.
But it's not.
It's a Polish name.
Is it? It looks Italian.
Right. There's a district in Ravenna that's called Basiago, but it's actually, my dad was a Polish American. It actually means, I believe, beekeeper in Polish, as derived from the medieval Latin word for
Because
beehives.
as we know, there are no more bees anymore. I wonder, did you guys look at the bees in the future? Find out what happened to the honeybees?